D-Rex, a malformed monstrosity unlike anything the franchise has ever seen before on screen. This summer showed us one of the most dangerous entities to ever exist in the world, dreamt by Michael Crichton. But how would the franchise's past contend with this newest nightmare? On this episode of Goji Center, we look at all 6 previous installments of the Jurassic franchise to see which might be able to stop an invasion by this doomsday mutant, to see if something might survive and which might go extinct. D-Rex versus the Jurassic Saga. Now, we may see some more action out of the Distorted King in future outings of the franchise. After all, it has joined the rare club of Jurassic antagonists like the JP3 Spino to survive its introduction film. Future installments and games might give us some further showings of its combative abilities. We're waiting, Evolution 3. For now, though, we can still use our prior analysis as well as what is on screen to try and judge if the D-Rex is a warrior or a wimp. Watch the prior videos for more context, but to give you the short rundown, the D-Rex seems to be a heavily altered Tyrannosaurus with errors in the Hox genes and/or other additives, making it reach the size and shape it is. And size is definitely its best asset. At over 8 meters or 26 feet tall, it towers over every other on-screen carnivore in the franchise. The runner-up, the Biosyn Giganotosaurus, and the Spino by the time of Camp Cretaceous can only approach that high when rearing up as tall as they can in an awkward stance. Its jaws are still mostly intact from the suspected Tyrannosaurus base, and even if there might be some deformities involved weakening them, sheer size would help make up for any loss in force, with crunching power potentially between 50 to 80% stronger than an average Tyrannosaurus. As a hexapod, a creature with 6 limbs, the D-Rex probably can't get much out of using its smaller T-Rex-like arms aside from clutching very close objects. Its bigger set of limbs, though, which seem to combine features of Tyrannosaurus arms and legs, could, however, make for dangerous tools. It may not be the most capable big-armed combatant, lacking the mobility and dexterity of an ape, but it can still clutch and grab enough to pull something close for a bite or slam them into the ground. With each arm weighing several tons, just the bludgeoning force alone might be plenty lethal. Weight-wise, the Jurassic franchise again has a time-honored tradition of not making the most sense. Some listings give the D-Rex a fairly plausible mass north of 17 to 22 tons, which is light, but makes some sense for something that big. It even matches up to some of our pre-release estimates. It also loosely matches remarks about it being twice the size of a typical T-Rex. Others, however, confusingly only put it at about 10 to 11 tons. Still bigger than most theropods in the franchise, and not as egregious as something else in the movie, but extremely low for its size. The D-Rex probably isn't the most agile creature, relying mostly on stealth and force rather than nimble footwork and speed. But if it can get within range and grab or bite, that might be a deadly combination for almost any other land animals in the franchise. The Distortus was, after all, remarked as being among the most dangerous creatures on the abandoned island. It truly may be among the most dangerous animals in the franchise, especially on its home island. But what about all the other islands of death seen in the other movies? Time to drop this upcoming terror into the past during the events of each prior film and assess what might be able to stand their ground against this mutation. Number 1. Jurassic Park. Strange as it is to say, Isla Nublar was probably at the safest it had ever potentially been in the franchise back in 1993. The island had only recently been populated by dinosaurs hatched on Isla Sorna, and Hammond's Park held significantly fewer creatures than Masrani's would decades later. Rexy was young and quick at the time, having just recently reached her adult size. While she definitely would have been much more nimble and agile than her mutated adversary, she was also at her smallest we had seen her on screen. At about 37 feet long and 6 to 7 tons, Nublar's queen would have been dwarfed by her own future self and look positively tiny fighting on her own against this menace. She'd likely be able to get some hits in and easily outrun the mutant if she needed to get some space between them, but a prolonged battle in a one-on-one confrontation could spell doom. An unlikely team-up with the debatably canon Alpha Triceratops from the Telltale game, Lady Margaret, might help even the odds some. Rexy had later shown she could exploit a chance assist from a cantankerous herbivore attacking the same target. But if either queen or matriarch took a critical hit, it would be curtains. It should be noted that if the D-Rex is given the lighter weight estimates of about 10 to 11 tons, the mass and strength difference closes by a lot. A lighter D-Rex would be a lot easier to topple, and once floored by a charging Margaret, Rexy has a much better chance to do some damage. With only 3 adult raptors on the island and them not exactly being team players, just about the only thing left that might be able to do something would be any one of the island Brachiosaurus. Between 50 to 70 tons, realistically one of these things might be capable of crushing the mutant by just trampling into it during a battle of titans. Unfortunately, a lot of the sauropods in this franchise tend to not have the best combative ability. In the end, it might just be best for anything on 90s Nublar to treat the D-Rex like how the people treated them. Run away! Number 2. The Lost World. Traveling forward and outward to Isla Sorna, and the D-Rex comes up against a greater challenge. Site B was positively brimming with dinosaurs at the time, with substantially more individuals from every species seen on Nublar. The striped raptor pack seen in the tall grass and worker village might actually be able to pose a threat to the Goliath mutant thanks to sheer numbers. And considering the huge skeletons seen near the village, they may not be unaccustomed to climbing up and cutting big beasts down to their level. One major problem, though, with this pack is its own chaos. Highly aggressive towards even their own kind if their fellow raptors get in their way, this pack sometimes attacks with less coordinated social hunting and more chaotic mob behavior. And with the D-Rex having numerous weapons and sheer size to fight back with, casualties might start mounting quickly. Plucking off raptors with its forearms, biting them to crush them instantly, or swatting them with sweeping blows of its big arms. An attempted pack attack might go south quickly, and the raptors might run away to come back and make a meal of their dead kin instead of pick a fight with the mutant again. The T-Rex couple, ironically enough, show substantially better pack coordination than the raptors. Roughly the same size as Rexy was, they still don't have the sheer mass to bring the mutant down easily. That said though, numbers and agility might help them in a confrontation. If they can avoid getting grabbed, the doe could distract the mutant as the buck circles around and goes for the legs and tail, then switching back and forth depending on which one the cumbersome Doomsday Bringer targets. It would be death by 1,000 bites, and one slip-up could spell disaster. Given how social the Tyrannosaur species is, and that there are at least a few others on the island, encountering this mutant might spur them to stick together for safety and increase their own chances in a fight. One tyrant lizard king might not triumph, but a kingdom might. Given these circumstances, this might be one of those cases where they might just stay out of each other's way. Jurassic Park 3. Flashing forward a few years to the same island, and the D-Rex could wind up confronted against the biggest carnivore in the franchise up to that point. Sorna's Spinosaurus was a formidable opponent, and might just be aggressive enough to take this intruding newcomer as a challenge. After all, it was already set off and specifically went looking for fights at the smell of Tyrannosaur scent. So, with the D-Rex probably being mostly Tyrannosaur itself, a clash between the two could be inevitable. But this is where the sailback's luck runs out. In its fight against the bull Tyrannosaur, the Spino leveraged its size and reach to its best advantage, shrugging off hits from the smaller predator to grapple its head and neck. From there, it was mostly making use of its own brute strength, height, and weight advantage to snap the neck. 3 things the Spino is not going to have fighting an opponent much heavier and taller than it is. Trying to target the head with a neck snap could still work, and a fight in the water might help swing the odds. But reaching there without getting grappled or crushed would be a Herculean, close to impossible task. There is, however, another predator from the third movie that might stand a chance. One who, in an earlier script of the third movie, was going to bring about the end for the Spinosaurus with brains over brawn. The raptor pack in Jurassic Park 3 that made their nest near the embryonic compound were distinctly different from every other raptor in the franchise. Led by their matriarch, this pack showed far better coordination and communication than just about every other pack in the franchise. And with intelligence rivaled by few, like the Atrociraptors in Chaos theory. Just 4 or 5 raptors wouldn't be nearly enough to bring down the rampaging mutation, but given the number of nests we saw, the true size of this pack might be measured in the dozens. And if all of them attacked in careful maneuvers, that might be enough for numbers to overcome even the D-Rex's size, being more than smart enough to jump on the back where the mutant wouldn't be able to easily reach, or go for the flanks and tail outside of grabbing or biting range. This pack might be able to pull it off over a very long time, making this creature succumb to blood loss. That's if the raptors are down with downing their own population at taking this D-Rex out. Number 4, Jurassic World. A clash of hybrid versus mutant. If the D-Rex found itself on Isla Nublar in the 2010s, it might well wind up crossing paths with the Indominus Rex amidst its rampage. And in a clash between one of the first creatures in the series to be called a monster and the latest to bear that title, only one monster could remain standing in the end if the encounter came to blows. This would be a battle of raw force versus raw abilities. The Indominus has managed to cut down larger opponents before, but now she is up against one far more well-armed than any of the other gentle giants on the island. In the battle against Rexy, despite having a height and weight advantage, it took the Indominus a while to get control of the fight, and some timely distraction by Blue left her getting ragdolled by the irate Tyrannosaurus. She absolutely was stronger than the older Rexy at the time, but inexperience might be something of a handicap. In a one-on-one confrontation, the Indominus would have her best chance using her camouflage to get a first strike, trying to circle around and go for the legs to cut the towering Colossus's foundations out from under it by damaging the tendons and muscle. But with the D-Rex having 4 limbs to act as a foundation, this wouldn't be as easy as if she was fighting a biped. It's also notable that her camouflage ability would be largely limited to this initial ambush. Camouflaging animals like the cuttlefish she got the genes from can't instantly change on the fly when moving. This isn't the active camo from the Predator we're talking about. It takes a moment for the skin to adjust. And in the midst of a fight that she can't afford to get grabbed on, the Indominus would have a very hard time getting that moment after the first strike. If she kept committing to the battle, it's probable that the mutant could get a hold of and crush the life out of the hybrid. Instead, brains would help the Indominus more than brawn. If she played her cards right and got every theropod she might have tried to communicate with, like the Raptor Squad, Toro, and Rexy, to join forces, a coalition of predators might be able to hold their own against the rampaging mutant. Alternatively, the Distortus, being ever curious and not the most overly aggressive creature, might open up an avenue for the Indominus to win by not fighting. If those two started communicating and the Distorted King was actually curious enough to listen, everyone on the island would have a substantially worse outcome if those two teamed up. If there was anything we learned in the movie and in the tie-in series Camp Cretaceous, it's that this Indom can be diplomatic at times. Had it not been for Rexy attacking first, the Indom would have probably taken the opportunity to make Rexy her next valuable ally. Number 5, Fallen Kingdom. Dropping this monstrous mutation right outside the Lockwood Manor after the initial breakout would prove disaster for anyone and anything involved. With the dinosaurs on Isla Sorna forgotten by the scriptwriters to be MIA, the only creatures are those from Nublar, all caged, sickly, and emaciated, with the only released animals being a Stygimoloch that's going to have the common sense to book it out of there, and Blue, who probably doesn't want anything to do with this fight. That just leaves him. The Indoraptor does have impressive durability, but stopping about 1,000 foot-pounds behind a rifle bullet is one thing. Stopping the crunching force of a supersized mutant Rex that chewed into the cockpit of a helicopter is a whole different matter. The Indoraptor might just be crazed enough to engage the D-Rex, jumping onto its back from the rooftops like something out of Attack on Titan to claw and bite anything it can reach. But staying on something thrashing around like that with no help would be an impossible feat. It would inevitably get grabbed or shaken off, and its armored skin is not going to stop it from just getting crushed right through it. The best shot the heroes might have is for Maisie to open up that gate at just the right time and hopefully see how well the mutant stands up to a full stampede crashing into it. Dominion. If there was anything that might derail the fated Clash of Titans matchup between Rexy and Biosyn's Giga, it's this, the Tower of Power showing up. As one of the most powerful theropods in the franchise up to that point, the Giganotosaurus is probably one of the best to potentially take on the mutation. Young, in good health, and the heavily serrated teeth of this gigantic carnosaur would probably be the best weapons to try and cut down the Colossus. After all, its genetic forebears used more or less similar teeth to whittle away at animals a lot bigger than the T-Rex. But this is still a fight against an opponent the Giga would have no context for. And even with how large Biosyn's scarred champion is, it now finds itself against an opponent it can't easily outmuscle. One-on-one, it would be a bloody affair, but the mutation might have enough raw force to overpower and crush the life out of the Giga. Ironically enough, the Carnosaur's best chance relies on another foe. As the old saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and if Rexy's near legendary aggression kicks in and she joins in on the attack, less to help the Giga and more just to attack the mutant too, that might help tilt the odds. Especially if a certain cantankerous Longclaw also joins in, should the Therizinosaurs be close enough to get provoked. So, can Distortus Rex survive the previous outings? The answer is highly dependent on how this animal behaves. All the creatures that we have previously mentioned that could spell doom for the Distortus have a potentially equal or more dangerous counterpart in St. Hubert. The JP3 raptors that could bring down the D-Rex in sheer numbers had their Hubert cousins dominated in Rebirth by a single Mutodon. The new T-Rex is implied to be more dangerous than any other T-Rex we've seen previously, and the fact that 5 Spinosaurus and their big buddy Mosa still haven't crossed paths with the D-Rex lays bare the fact that this guy can behave and stay out of unnecessary trouble. The final verdict is that D-Rex could survive the previous outings, but time will tell if the Distorted King will run out of luck in the future.